Sensors on, now for the digital log. See the crack? It's progressing. Deflection is critical.
How bad is the risk?
It's from June. Love you, Daddy. Vera, look at this spike. The sensors show critical deflection.
That's beyond threshold. We need to check the slab.
Here it is. The measurements match the drawing. This is a major risk.
He had $340 in his checking account when he walked out of the courthouse. He knew the number exactly because he had checked it on his phone while the judge was still speaking, not from distraction, but from the particular focus of a man who needed to know precisely what he was working with before the next thing started. The settlement had been what it had been. The attorney fees had been what they had been. The house was gone. The joint accounts were gone. And what remained was $340 and a 2009 pickup truck in the parking garage on 5th Street that needed new rear brake pads, and that he had been managing carefully for 3 weeks, because the brake job required $180 he had not had. He stood on the courthouse steps for a moment. It was November. The air had the specific quality of a November afternoon in the Midwest, not cold enough to be dramatic, but cold enough to mean it. His daughter was at his mother's house. She was 4. Her name was June. She did not yet know what divorce court was, and he intended to keep it that way for as long as a 4-year-old's world could be kept intact from the outside. He had a plan. He had always had a plan, even before the plan was fully visible. He had been a structural engineer for 11 years. He had his license. He had his tools. He had the specific expertise of someone who had spent a decade understanding how things were built and what happened when they were built wrong. He had the truck. He had $340. He had June. He walked down the courthouse steps toward the parking garage. That was when he heard it. The sound was low at first, a rhythmic thud that built from background to foreground over about 15 seconds. He was at the bottom of the steps when it became impossible to ignore. He looked up. A helicopter, coming in from the northeast, descending not toward the rooftop of any building, but toward the open lot adjacent to the courthouse, an overflow parking area that was empty on a Tuesday afternoon, with the deliberate precision of a machine that had done this before and intended to be here. People on the sidewalk were stopping, looking up. The helicopter set down, clean, unhurried, exactly where it intended to be. The door opened. He watched from the courthouse steps. Stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels. Eli Marsh had been waking up at 6 every morning for 4 years, since June arrived, and decided that 6 was the correct hour for everything to begin. And in those 4 years, the only variation had been directional. Some mornings she came to his room before he was up. Some mornings he was already in the kitchen when she appeared. But the time was always the same, and the expectation was always the same, and he had organized his life around it, the way you organize a life around the things that do not change. He was 38. He had the engineering degree, and the license, and 11 years of work on projects that ranged from residential structural assessments to mid-rise commercial buildings, to one significant infrastructure project that had required 18 months of his life, and that he still considered the best technical work he had ever done. He had worked for 2 different firms in his career, left the second one 3 years ago to go independent, and built a solo practice that had been doing well enough in the year before the marriage ended, and had been doing less well in the year it was ending, because the year a marriage ends is not a year that lends itself to consistent professional focus. He was going to fix that. He had a notebook in his jacket pocket, a small one, the kind that fit in a breast pocket, and in the notebook was a list of 8 potential clients he had not yet contacted because the previous months had not had the bandwidth. He had written the list 2 weeks ago. He was going to start calling on Thursday, not tomorrow, because tomorrow was June at his mother's, and the drive each way, and the brake situation. Thursday. He had $340. He stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps and watched the helicopter and thought about Thursday. The door of the helicopter opened fully. A woman stepped out. She was tall, somewhere in her early 40s, wearing a coat that was not dramatic, but was clearly the product of careful decisions. She had the movement of someone who had been climbing in and out of helicopters often enough that it required no thought. A second person followed her, a man with a bag over his shoulder who appeared to be an assistant. She looked across the lot. She looked at the courthouse. She looked, for a moment, at the steps. She walked toward them. He watched her come. There was something in how she moved that was directional, in the way of someone who has a specific destination and has already confirmed it internally. She walked past the people who had gathered to watch the helicopter. She walked to the base of the courthouse steps. She stopped. She looked at him. "Eli Marsh," she said. He looked at her. "Yes. My name is Vera Strand." She did not extend a hand. She looked at him with the kind of attention that takes full measure of a thing, before deciding what to do with what it finds. "I've been trying to reach you for 6 days. He looked at her. He thought about the phone he had been intermittently answering during the past 6 days, which had not been his finest 6 days of professional responsiveness. "I may have missed a call," he said. 4 calls, she said, and 2 emails. He looked at the helicopter behind her. He looked at the November sky. He looked at the woman named Vera Strand who had arrived in a helicopter on a Tuesday afternoon, outside a courthouse. "You could have left a message explaining what it was regarding," he said. She almost smiled. It was barely visible, but it was there. "I could have," she said. "I find that the conversations I need to have are better in person." He looked at her for a moment. "What conversation do you need to have?" "There's a building," she said. "I'd like to show you." He looked at the parking garage where his truck was. He looked at her. "I have a brake job I need to get done today," he said. She looked at him, the almost smile again. "My driver can have it taken to a shop while we talk. I'll cover it." He was quiet for a moment. "You landed a helicopter outside a courthouse to offer to pay for my brake job." "I landed a helicopter outside a courthouse to ask for your help with a significant structural problem," she said. "The brake job is practical." He looked at the courthouse steps. He looked at the helicopter. He thought about $340. He thought about Thursday, and the list of 8 names, and the plan that was visible enough to begin. "What building?" he said. Vera Strand had built the Strand Development Group in 14 years from a single commercial acquisition into a firm with $1 billion in assets across 4 asset classes. She was 44. She had been profiled more than she found useful, and had developed a relationship with publicity that was purely transactional. She used it when it served a purpose, and ignored it when it did not, which was most of the time. She ran the firm with the specific efficiency of someone who understood that clarity was the highest form of respect for other people's time, including her own. She made decisions at the pace that the quality of the decision allowed, some quickly, some not, but never slowly for its own sake, and never quickly for the sake of appearing decisive. The building was a problem she had been sitting with for 8 weeks. It was a 12-story mixed-use tower she had acquired 18 months ago as part of a portfolio transaction, not the primary asset in the portfolio, a secondary one, acquired at a value that reflected the known condition issues and left room for remediation. The known condition issues had been addressed. The unknown condition issue had emerged 6 weeks after the remediation was complete, when a hairline crack appeared in the transfer slab on the 4th floor. Not large, not visible to anyone who was not looking for it, but precisely positioned in a way that told the 2 structural engineers she had hired that something in the building's load path was not doing what the original design said it should be doing. She had now had 4 structural engineers look at the building. She had 4 reports with 4 different conclusions. 2 said the crack was cosmetic, the result of thermal cycling, no structural significance. 1 said it indicated a design deficiency in the original transfer slab that required remediation. 1 said it indicated a construction deficiency rather than a design deficiency, which had entirely different implications for who was responsible and what needed to be done. The building had 12 floors of tenants, commercial on the lower 4, residential on 5 through 12. She was not going to tell 12 floors of people there might be a structural issue until she knew what the issue was. She was also not going to pretend she knew what the issue was when she did not. She had been given Eli Marsh's name by a structural engineer in St. Wa who had reviewed one of the reports and said, simply, "There is one person I know who can look at this and tell you what is actually there. He has been right every time I have seen him work. Get him." She had called 4 times and emailed twice. She had gotten on the helicopter on a Tuesday. She had found out, from the Engineering Licensing Board's public records, that he was registered and current. She had found out, from a contact at a commercial real estate firm in the city, that he had been going through a divorce. She had taken an educated guess about where a man going through a divorce might be, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, and she had been right. She was often right about things she had no business being right about, which was a quality she had stopped trying to explain, and simply used. They sat in the helicopter while it remained on the lot. Her assistant had taken the keys to Eli's truck and left for the brake shop. She had spread the 4 structural reports across the fold-down table between them, and watched him read. He read with the specific quality she had been told about. Not fast, not slow, but with the total attention of someone who was not reading for information, but for structure, the way a musician reads a score, rather than the way a person reads a novel. He read for 22 minutes without speaking. She sat across from him and let him read. When he finished, he looked at the reports arranged on the table. He looked at the photographs of the crack that were clipped to the back of each report. He looked at the original structural drawings she had included, the design documents from the building's construction 14 years ago. The 2 reports that say it's cosmetic, he said. Did either of them model the load path above the transfer slab? I don't believe so. They didn't. I can see the methodology. They assessed the crack in isolation and characterized it as surface. But this crack, he pointed at one of the photographs, is on the compression face of the transfer slab. A crack on the compression face is not cosmetic. She was quiet. The question, he said, is whether the crack represents a design issue or a construction issue. Your 3rd and 4th reports split on this. Yes, they split because they'd looking at the crack instead of looking at what the crack is telling them about behavior. The crack is a symptom. To diagnose the cause, I need to instrument the slab and measure how it's actually moving under live load. That's not a visual inspection. That's a monitoring program with sensors. She looked at him. How long? 2 weeks of data. 4 would be better. What would the data tell us? Whether the slab is deflecting beyond its design tolerance under the current load. If it is, the cause is either design, the slab was underspecified for the actual load, or construction. The slab was specified correctly, but built incorrectly. The deflection pattern will distinguish between the 2. She looked at the reports. And if it's a construction deficiency, then the original contractor is liable. The building was constructed 14 years ago. There's a statute of limitations question, but the documentation trail matters. And if it's a design deficiency, then the engineer of record carries the exposure. Also 14 years ago. The same documentation question applies. She looked at the photographs of the crack, and if the slab is not deflecting beyond tolerance, then your cosmetic assessment engineers are right, and you close the crack, apply a sealant, and monitor annually. He paused. But they're not right. She looked at him. You're certain? I'm certain enough to tell you before I've instrumented anything. The position of the crack on the compression face is diagnostic in itself. The question I can't answer yet without data is the cause, not the significance. She looked at him for a moment. 4 engineers, 4 reports, 4 different answers to the same question, and this man had read the same materials for 22 minutes and produced a clear map of what was known, what was unknown, and how to find out. How much, she said. He told her. She looked at the number. She looked at the reports. The monitoring program, she said. Does it require the building to be vacated? No. The sensors are non-intrusive. I install them during off hours. Tenants are not affected. She looked at the crack photograph. 12 floors, commercial and residential. 340 people who did not know they were living and working in a building with an undiagnosed crack on the compression face of a transfer slab. Start Monday, she said. He called his mother from the parking garage after the helicopter had lifted and the truck was back with new brake pads and a receipt he had been told to keep for reimbursement. His mother answered on the 2nd ring. How was court? She said. Done, he said. And $340 in the account. The truck has brakes now. A woman arrived by helicopter. A pause. In that order. In that order. She was quiet for a moment. A woman in a helicopter. A helicopter to a parking lot next to the courthouse. She had my name. She had 4 structural engineering reports she needed read. She wants me to start Monday. On what? he told her. She listened without interrupting, which was not her usual mode, but which she used for things she was taking seriously. Is it a real problem? She said. The building. Yes. Real and undiagnosed. Can you fix it? I can find out what it is. That's the first thing. Can you afford not to take it? He looked at the parking garage. He looked at the truck with its new brakes. He thought about Thursday, and the list of 8 names, and the plan. No, he said. Then go on Monday, she said. June is here, she said. She has been here. She will be here Monday. He looked at the exit of the parking garage. November light. The kind that was almost gone by 4 o'clock. Tell her I'll be there for dinner, he said. She already knows that, his mother said. She told me to tell you not to be late, because she's making something. He looked at the phone. She's 4. She said she's making something. I don't know what it is, but she has been very serious about the preparation. He ended the call. He sat in the truck for a moment. He thought about the list in his notebook. He would not need to start calling on Thursday. He thought about $340, and new brakes, and 22 minutes of reading, and a helicopter on a Tuesday. He thought about June at his mother's house being very serious about the preparation of something. He drove to his mother's. June had made a card. It was a piece of construction paper that she had folded in half and decorated on the front, with what was either a house or a mountain, or possibly both, drawn in the confident lines of a 4-year-old who is drawing the thing she sees internally, rather than the thing as it exists. Inside, she had asked his mother to write what she said, which was, Dad, you always fix things. This card is for if you feel broke. He sat at his mother's kitchen table and read the card twice. June was watching him with the particular attentiveness of someone who has made something, and is waiting to know if it landed. Broke or broken, his mother said quietly, behind him. She said broke, June said, without looking away from Eli, because that's what you said on the phone. He looked at his daughter. 4 years old. She had heard one word from a conversation through a closed door, and had made something in response. Thank you, Bug, he said. She climbed onto the chair beside him and looked at the card with him. Do you feel better? She said. A lot better, he said. She looked at the card. She looked at the front of it, the house mountain. I made the building tall, she said, because you work on tall buildings. He looked at the drawing. The building was tall, disproportionately tall for the paper, reaching to the top edge, confident and specific. It's a good building, he said. It doesn't have a crack, she said. He looked at her. How do you know about cracks? You explained it once, when we walked past that building on Mercer Street, and you stopped and looked at it. He had done that. 18 months ago, he had stopped outside a building on Mercer Street, and looked at a crack in the facade, and explained to a 2.5-year-old what it meant and what it didn't mean, not expecting her to retain any of it. You remembered that, he said. You said the crack was telling you something, she said. You said if you listened right you could understand what it was trying to say. He looked at the card. The tall building without a crack. His daughter at 4 who had been listening when he thought no one was listening. Yeah, he said. That's right. That's what you do, she said, with the simplicity of a summary that needs nothing added to it. You listen to what buildings are trying to say. He arrived at the Strand building on Monday, at 7 a.m. The building manager had been briefed. The access he needed had been arranged. He carried the monitoring equipment in 2 cases, and spent the first hour and 40 minutes installing sensors at 6 points on the transfer slab, 2 on the compression face at the crack location, 2 at the midspan, 2 at the supports. The sensors were small, discreet, connected wirelessly to a logging unit he placed in the building's mechanical room. Vera Strand arrived at 9 o'clock. She came into the mechanical room and looked at the logging unit and looked at him and said, How long before you have preliminary data? First useful read at 48 hours. Better picture at a week. Definitive at 2. What will you do while it collects? Review the original construction documents. I requested them from the building department archive last week. They should be ready. She looked at the logging unit. The 2 engineers who said cosmetic. If they're wrong and this is significant, then they missed it. That's a professional liability question that belongs between you and them. He paused. I'm not here to litigate their work. I'm here to find out what's actually there. She looked at him. Does it bother you that they missed it? He thought about this. It bothers me that 12 floors of people are in an undiagnosed situation. The why of the miss, that's for afterward. She looked at the transfer slab above them, visible through the ceiling access panel he had used during installation. She looked at the sensors. She looked at him. "I want to show you something," she said. She took him to the 4th floor. She walked him through the commercial space to the corner where the crack was visible. It ran 18 inches across the compression face, thin as a hair, the kind of thing you walked past without registering, unless you knew to look. He crouched beside it. He looked at it the way he had looked at the reports. Not fast, not slow, with the total attention of someone who was listening. "It moved," he said. She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The crack. Since these photographs were taken." He pointed to the report photograph she had brought. "This endpoint," he indicated a position on the wall, "was here in the photograph. It's extended approximately 4 millimeters since then." She looked at the photograph. She looked at the wall. "The cosmetic assessment was done 4 weeks ago," she said. "Yes." He stood. "A cosmetic crack does not extend 4 millimeters in 4 weeks. This is an active condition." She was very still. "The monitoring data will tell us the rate and the pattern," he said. "But I'm telling you now, before the data confirms it, so you have time to think about what you want to do while it does." She looked at the crack. "The tenants. That's your decision. I can tell you the rate of progression when I have the 2-week data. That will let you make an informed decision about timing. And if the rate suggests urgency before 2 weeks, then I call you before 2 weeks." She looked at the crack. She looked at him. "You're going to tell me things I don't want to know. I'm going to tell you what's there," he said. "What you don't want to know is not something I can manage for you." She looked at him for a long moment. 4 engineers, 4 reports, 4 different versions of what was there. And this man had walked into the building and looked at a crack for 45 seconds and told her it had moved. "My father built this building," she said. He looked at her. He was a developer. He built this building 14 years ago as his first high-rise. He passed 3 years ago. This was the building he was most proud of. She looked at the crack. He sold it as part of a portfolio to another owner. I acquired it from that owner 18 months ago. I didn't tell my team that my father built it. He was quiet. I didn't tell them because I didn't want the acquisition decision to be colored by sentiment," she said. "It was a good acquisition on the numbers. That was the reason. And now," she looked at the crack, "now I need to know what the building is trying to say. Because if something was done wrong when it was built, if there was a construction deficiency, my father's firm may be in the documentation trail." He understood now. This was not simply a structural problem. It was a structural problem in a building her father had built, which she had acquired, which she had been unable to get a clear answer on for 8 weeks, because the clear answer had implications that went beyond the building. "The data will show what it shows," he said. "I can't tell you in advance what it will find." "I know," she said. "I'm not asking you to." She looked at the crack. "I'm telling you so you know the full context, so that when you find something, you understand why I needed someone who would tell me what is actually there." He looked at the crack. He thought about 4 engineers and 4 answers. He thought about a woman in a helicopter on a Tuesday afternoon, outside a courthouse, who had said, "I find that the conversations I need to have are better in person. I'll tell you what is actually there," he said. "I know you will," she said. "That's why I flew to a parking lot." The 2-week data came back on a Thursday morning. He called her before he sent the report. "I have the data," he said. "Tell me," she said. He told her. The slab was deflecting, not catastrophically, not imminently dangerous, but beyond the design tolerance. The deflection pattern was diagnostic. It was consistent with underspecification of the slab depth in the original design, not with a construction error. The slab had been built as designed. The design had not accounted for the full cumulative live load across the 12 floors in the configuration they were carrying. "The engineer of record," she said. "Yes, not the contractor. No. The contractor built what they were given. The specification was the issue." She was quiet for a moment. "My father hired the engineer of record. He was with the firm for the first 8 years of his career. He trusted him completely. The engineer of record made an error," Eli said. "The building has been carrying this load for 14 years. The crack appeared 18 months ago, which is consistent with the cumulative load reaching a threshold the slab was not designed for. Is it remediable?" "Yes, carbon fiber reinforcement on the compression face. load redistribution through supplemental columns in 2 locations, remonitoring for 6 months after remediation, straightforward once the diagnosis is correct. She was quiet for a long time. Vera, he said, I'm here. The building is remediable. Your tenants can stay through the remediation process. The engineer of record made a mistake 14 years ago, and the building has been telling you about it for 18 months. That's the whole story. Everything else is legal and procedural, and belongs to other people. She breathed. Your father built a building that has housed 12 floors of people for 14 years, he said. The foundation is sound. The structure is sound except for this one slab. He made one hire that produced one error. That's not the whole of what he built. She was quiet again. The different kind of quiet. Thank you for that, she said. You didn't have to say it. It's what's there, he said. She exhaled. Send the report. I'll have my attorney and the engineer of records insurer on a call this afternoon. The report will be there in an hour. Eli. He waited. June, she said. Your daughter. Is she with you today? He looked at the notebook on his desk. The list of 8 names he had never called, because he had not needed to. June's card propped against the monitor. The tall building without a crack. She's at my mother's, he said. I pick her up at 4. She made you a card, Vera said. You told me, when I asked why you needed to leave by 3:30 on the first day. I told you that. You said she was making something, and she had been very serious about the preparation. He looked at the card. She made a building, he said. Tall, without a crack. A pause. Does she know that's what you do? That you find the cracks? She told me once. I'd explained it to her when she was 2. She told me that I listened to what buildings are trying to say. The quiet again. The kind that was not empty. I'd like to meet her, Vera said. Not for any reason. Just, I'd like to meet the person who figured that out at 2. He looked at the card. The tall building. The card is for if you feel broke. She would tell you the building on the front doesn't have a crack, he said. She'll probably make that point early. That's the one I want to see, she said. The one without the crack. He looked at the card for a moment. Come to dinner, he said. She eats at 5:30. She has strong opinions about the menu, and she will share them. A pause, long enough that he wondered if he had miscalculated. Thursday, she said. 5:30. Thursday, he said. He ended the call. He looked at the card. He looked at the logging unit data on his screen. The deflection pattern. The diagnosis. The remediation path. The building that had been trying to say something for 18 months, and had now been heard. He picked up June's card and looked at it again. The tall building without a crack. The message inside in his mother's handwriting. Dad, you always fix things. This card is for if you feel broke. He was not broke. He had not been broke since Tuesday, if he was honest. He had been $340 and a truck and a plan, and a list of 8 names, and then a helicopter had landed, and now he was something else. Something that was still becoming. The way Ellie had described the in-between faces, in a different story, in a different notebook, but becoming in the right direction. He set the card back against the monitor. He sent the report. He picked up June at 4, 10 minutes early, because there was enough left of the afternoon to stop at the park on the way home if they wanted to, and she always wanted to. She came out of his mother's house, and saw him at the gate, and held up a hand. Not a wave, just a raised palm, the greeting of someone who has been expecting you, and is confirming you have arrived. He raised his back. Early, she said. A little. Park, she said. It was not a question. If you want. She considered this with the seriousness she brought to logistical decisions. Yes, she said, with the confidence of someone who has made a correct assessment. Park first, then dinner, then Thursday you have a guest. He looked at her. How do you know about Thursday? I heard you on the phone. She took his hand. Is it the helicopter lady? He looked at the street. Yes. She started walking, pulling him gently toward the park. Good, she said. I want to show her the card. He looked at her. She already knows about the card. June looked up at him, with the direct attention of someone receiving information, and upgrading her assessment of the situation. Then she already knows the important thing, she said, and walked on, confident in this direction, and the destination, and the specific satisfaction of a 4-year-old who has made something that mattered, and knows it. If this story reached you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And subscribe, because the next story is already written, and it starts exactly where this one left off.